live with the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in beautiful downtown Raleigh. It's Science Tonight. Now here's your host, Chris Smith.
Hey everybody, good evening and welcome to Science Tonight. I am your host, Chris Smith. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's broadcast. Listen, we've got a great program for you this evening. I'm going to be talking with Millipede expert, entomologist, Dr. Derek Hennen. You might be familiar with Derek because he is somewhat prolific on the Twitter as @Derek Hennen. He also runs a popular Twitter account called @DearMillipede. So if the critters that crawl really they're your favorites, they're the best, then go ahead and give Dear Millipede a follow on Twitter. And if they're not your favorites, stick around because I'm sure by the end of our hour together, they will be one of your favorite critters. Because listen, I don't think anybody appreciates millipedes quite like Dr. Hennen does. But before we get into the program, I've got some announcements, got some housekeeping things. First off, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, you've got the chat open, you've got the comments open. You can drop your questions and comments for Derek as we go through the program. So make sure you do that. As we go through, drop questions in there. I'll be going back to the comments a little bit later in the program, and I'll ask Derek your questions. So everybody tuning in now, you get the chance to participate in this as well. So get active in the chat. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you want to know. Also, if you're watching this show, then you're probably somebody who likes to learn new things and be engaged in sort of what's happening in the world of science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Every Wednesday at noon, I host another program called the Lunchtime Discovery Series that's co-produced with the Office of Environmental Education here in North Carolina. They're part of the Department of Environmental Quality. Anyway, every Wednesday at noon for the month of February, we're hosting a special series of lectures on Black History Month. So stories of equity and environmental justice in North Carolina and beyond. So tune into that program every Wednesday at noon. I want to see everybody there in the chat with their great thoughts and questions for that show as well. Information about all of those programs is available at naturalsciences.org. Now, let me bring on tonight's very special guest. Derek is a myriapodologist, and if you don't know what that is, you'll learn very quickly. And like I said, an expert on all things millipede. Derek, welcome to the program.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, glad that we could bring you on to the Science Tonight virtual stage, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. It's a very snazzy setup you've got.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I was looking at your setup right here, and I can't tell if you just like came in from the cold and threw a scarf, or is that actually like a knit millipede in the background?
Well, you're right on both things because it is a knit millipede scarf. I hope you can see it, but each of the little segments has two legs on it, and that's how you know it's a millipede. Two pairs of legs, that is.
Oh my gosh! So you have an anatomically correct.
That's right.
Scarf.
That's right. It's very important.
That is brilliant. Okay, I'm going to jump in real quick. I see like orange and black stripes. Is this a particular species or is this creative license?
It's creative license because those are the colors of Virginia Tech. So it's a Hokie millipede.
It's a Hokie millipede. Virginia Tech being where you did your PhD research?
Yes, exactly. And Hokie being the mascot.
And Hokie being the mascot.
Yes.
Okay, I see. That's great. Are you still in Blacksburg, Virginia then?
I am, yeah. Yeah, it's been quite snowy here, so it's been nice.
Oh, that is nice. We got here in the Triangle, we got one snow. It lasted for less than 1 day, and then it was gone. And who knows if we'll get another one? It's hard to tell here.
Yeah, we got our snow and then the bitter cold, so I've been pretty much holed up inside the apartment most of my time. So, that's fine. Well, I enjoy the warmth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah.
Well, tell you what, let's get into the show because I want to learn a lot about millipedes. But for folks who've been tuning into Science Tonight regularly, we start off by playing a little game with our guests. Not to make them look bad, no, just to have a little bit of fun, warm up into the interview. and yeah, just have a little bit of fun. So, Derek, are you up for a little bit of trivia?
Yes, I will do my best.
Perfect. Now, everybody, I've got 3 trivia questions. You can play along too. So over in the chat box, let me know what you think is the correct answer to each one of these questions as well. But we're going to see if Derek can get all the right answers. So, Derek, you are an expert in millipedes.
Yes.
And the one thing that people know about millipedes, and you've alluded to here, is they have a whole lot of legs.
That is correct.
So I've prepared 3 trivia questions for you, all about famous legs in pop culture.
All right, let's do this.
You feel good about that?
I'm moderately okay with it. We'll see.
Moderately okay. Well, let's see how you do. Here comes your first question.
All right.
Bodybuilder Tom Platz is known for his impressive leg development, always better than the competition. What is Tom Platz's nickname? Is it A, the Quad Father, B, Chicken Legs, or C, Hamlet?
Well, I really like how C sounds. I think that's a great pun. But I like the Quad Father more. And I know nothing about bodybuilding, so I'm going to go with the Quad Father.
Tom, the Quad Father Platz is the correct answer.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Okay, all right. 1 for 3 so far. Of course, you need to get 2 correct, and then we'll put you in the Science Tonight Hall of Fame.
All right. Just one more. Let's see if I can get
2
it. 2
more chances. Here we go. Here's your next one. What was the inspiration for the famous leg lamp in the 1983 holiday classic, A Christmas Story? Was it Marilyn Monroe, a knee-high soda ad, or the Radio City Rockettes?
Well, I've seen A Christmas Story many times, so I'm very familiar with that lamp.
Sure.
I had no idea about any inspiration for it. I don't know what Nehi soda is, so I'm going to have to Google that later. But when this question popped up, I saw Radio City Rockettes, and I was like, maybe that. So I'm going to go with my gut and say C, Radio City Rockettes.
Okay, right. The famous dancing, the kicking.
Yeah.
Sure, very, very leg heavy. The correct answer, no, it's the knee-high soda. Get it? Knee-high.
Oh,
knee-high.
Gotcha.
Knee-high soda. And the advertisements from back in the day featured this, such as you see, and was the inspiration in the 60s for the author who originally wrote A Christmas Story.
All right.
Gene Shepard.
Interesting.
All right. You're 1 and 1.
All
You got to get this one correct.
Didn't know it would be this high stakes.
The world of millipedes isn't this high stakes, is it? Although it seems like it would be. Okay. Which celebrity has or had millions of dollars in insurance on their legs? Is it David Beckham, Heidi Klum, or Rihanna?
Now, I can see reasons for all of these people to have insurance for their legs. Unfortunately, I have no idea. Oof. Now, I think I'm going to have to go with David Beckham just because his legs are so important to his livelihood at soccer. So I think that's just got to be the one I go with.
All right. Final answer A, David Beckham?
Yes.
Correct answer is all 3 of them.
Oh, hey!
You could have picked any one of them. I rigged it. But
you gave me that one, Chris.
I wanted to make sure. David Beckham, Heidi Klum, and Rihanna all have insurance specifically on their legs. But very impressive, $70 million out on David Beckham.
That's an expensive leg. Well, I guess, 35 million per leg. So.
Oh, that knocks the price tag down a little bit, doesn't it? Well, congratulations, Derek. We'll put you in the Science Tonight Hall of Fame.
Awesome.
For our trivia round.
I didn't know I would end up caring about it that much, but I really did by question 3.
I'm
glad. I'm
going to have to work up like plaques or trophies that I send everybody just for doing a great job in the show. So that was all about famous legs in pop culture. you nailed the trivia question, but I feel like maybe I was able to research these things, but you already know a whole lot about the real famous legs in the world.
That's
And
right.
that's the many dozens that belong to the millipedes. So let's get the show started. Give me and everybody at home sort of a primer on who you are and what exactly you work on when we talk about millipedes.
Yeah, so millipedes, when we're talking about those, the first thing that pops into your head might be, I know it's a bug, but what kind of bug is it? So, as most people know, insects have 6 legs. Millipedes have more than 6 legs. So we know, okay, it's not an insect. What about an arachnid, spiders? They have 8 legs. So that's still not enough for us who study millipedes. So spiders, arachnids, they're also their own thing. So, kick in a couple more and you're at crustaceans. You're like, how many legs do crab or shrimps have? They're very tasty. But crustaceans are most closely related to insects. And so if we take, let's call that group Pancrustacea, the insects and the crustaceans. Now, the most closely related group to that are the myriapods. And so these are all these other terrestrial many-legged arthropods. And so we've got things like millipedes, which have 2 sets of legs on each segment. Then we've got things like centipedes that have 1 set of legs on each segment. And then these 2 other smaller groups that we call pauropods. You probably haven't seen them. They're only a couple millimeters long. They look like a little potato or Twinkie with legs. They're very cute. But again, you don't see them too often. And then you also have the symphylans, which are sometimes called the garden centipedes. They're, the largest they get up to is about a centimeter. They're just kind of white and translucent, and they live in the soil. So all of those groups are myriapods. And within myriapods, what I focus on are the millipedes. And so if you're asking yourself what sets millipedes apart from these other ones, the easiest way to think about it is just 2 sets of legs on each segment. You've got a millipede. And so I got interested in these things when I was an undergrad, and they just kind of hooked me when I started just kind of going out into the woods and seeing them and wanting to learn more about them. And so millipedes are just super cool. They're ubiquitous in forests. If you go out into your backyard, and if you're in the eastern U.S. and most parts of it, you're probably going to find a millipede if you can find a patch of trees. So within millipedes, I study their taxonomy. So I'm describing new species. I'm examining their relationships based on both their anatomy and also their genetics. And so within those millipedes, for my PhD work, I focused on millipedes in Appalachia and elsewhere in the eastern United States. And so it turns out that here in the eastern U.S., we are in a hotspot of biodiversity for millipedes, particularly a group that are known as the cherry millipedes. And so they're called that not because they taste like cherries. Do not eat these millipedes, but they smell like cherries. And the reason they smell is because they produce these chemical defenses. One of those defenses is hydrogen cyanide. And so that's a potent poison. That's why you don't want to smell them or anything. Why you don't want to eat them, excuse me. You can smell them just fine. And so they smell like almonds or maraschino cherries. And they often have these interesting color patterns that are like dark black with bright yellow or orange or red. It's really cool. And so I can describe how interesting and amazing these colors are all day. But let me just bring up a photo for you, and I'll share my screen to show you what it looks like. Because this is seeing these things is always just what gets me. So
yeah, let's see some pictures.
All right. So you should be seeing right now a photograph of a black millipede with big yellow and orange spots. And that is one of the cherry millipedes. And so this is one that can be found in the Blacksburg area. And the first time I saw this one, I was just amazed. It was so cool. I grew up in Southeast Ohio, and we don't have this species up there. And so when I first uncovered this one, it's just like, wow, it's like someone dripped paint on it. And so they're so vibrant. To us, they might look like candy or something, but we definitely do not want to eat them. And the reason why they're so vibrant and colorful like this is to warn any potential predators, hey, I'm aposematic. I want you to see me, and you should think that is a weird thing to want. And they're right, because if a small mammal or bird or something would eat one of these things, at the very least, they would throw up. At the worst, they would die. And so you don't want to be going around eating these millipedes. The other thing that got me really interested in this group is another characteristic they have. And so if you've ever seen a UV flashlight, it kind of puts out like a purple light. And what's really interesting about some of these millipedes is that they will fluoresce under UV light. So this is one
wow.
particular species, and this is the one that really hooked me into wanting millipedes. I saw this and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. So under normal light, it looks like this. It's kind of nice. It's kind of brown with these peat stripes. That's cool and all. But there was one warm summer night. I went out with a UV light and I flicked it on. And I was just kind of going amongst the leaf litter, and I turned it, and I saw just a dozen of these crawling across the leaves like little stars in the undergrowth. And so I saw that, and just immediately I was like, yes, this is what I'm doing now. And so it was just so cool to see. And, it's inspired me to share my love for millipedes with everyone else too. So I guess
Oh
that's
my
that's
God.
what I'm about.
That is incredible. I had no idea that they could fluoresce.
Yeah, I hadn't either. I learned that, and it's like, why doesn't everyone know about this? And this was back in like, she's 2010 or so, 2011. And so now with the advent of the internet and iNaturalist and all these photo sharing sites, it's a little bit better understood and better known amongst people now. But I mean, that just blew my mind. I'd never heard of anything like that. So I mean, it's amazing. I love them.
And so the millipedes that you just showed us, these are ones that people can find in their backyards, like here in the Carolinas or Virginias.
Throughout the eastern U.S., really, as long as you're near a forest. This particular group, you can find them, west all the way to Arkansas, south through Texas, and east to the Atlantic coast. And so they're pretty much everywhere. They kind of putter out a little bit around the Great Plains states and in the desert and Rockies, but on the west coast, they appear again. And so if you're in like California, you've got UV fluorescent millipedes, but you are also lucky because California has some of the only bioluminescent millipedes. And so, here in the East, we're used to fireflies bioluminescing and making their own light and, just delighting our lives in the spring and the summer. Out West, their fireflies don't bioluminesce, but they have millipedes that do. Whereas on the East, our fireflies light up, but our millipedes don't. So we did kind of a trade there. I would kind of love to have some of those millipedes, but, it'd be tough to trade all the good firefly times for the millipedes.
Yeah, I wonder how all of the country music songs would go if we had fluorescent millipedes.
They'd be 100%
everywhere instead
better.
Of fireflies. 100% better.
Yes. I bet Taylor Swift could write a good one about him.
Oh, if anybody knows Tay Swiffers, give her a call. Tell her we've got a new subject for a song.
Yes, please.
We'll get Taylor Swift in touch with you. You can inspire Taylor, and then we're set.
Sounds good.
So give us a little bit of the Millipede 101. Like, for example, I'm pretty interested in this cherry almond smell. I've been fortunate enough to experience this, seeing the black and yellow millipedes that I feel like are pretty common around this part of the North Carolina. And you pick, you scoop them up, and as soon as you do, all of a sudden your hands start to smell like really strong cherries, like a maraschino cherry smell. Yeah. Fortunately, I've never licked one.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
To experience the, you said hydrogen cyanide?
Yeah, so the hydrogen cyanide comes off as a gas, but the liquid part is the benzaldehyde. And so probably if you did lick it, that'd be most of what you'd be getting, but it'd be very bitter and just not good.
Yeah, just not very good.
Yeah.
So you said it's not just this one millipede. There's an entire group of these cherry millipedes.
Exactly. So there's an entire family called the Xystodesmidae, and those are the cherry millipedes. There's about 500 species. We're actually describing some more very soon, so be on the lookout for that. But within that group of millipedes, they're called the flat-backed millipedes, the Polydesmida, and this has a couple thousand members. It's the most diverse order of millipedes. And so those are worldwide, and all of them, or almost all of them, can produce that hydrogen cyanide. And so it's a very potent defense, and it's been very effective for them. So it's one of their main defenses against predators. It's kind of, chemical defense. If you have picked those millipedes up, then you've noticed that they tend to sort of curl up because they're trying to protect their underside and, have their nice armor plating on their back to protect them. And another defense is they'll also poop on you. So if you pick them up, you get that too.
Lots of cool defenses.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, you said 500 species of this cherry millipede group, 2,000 species How many millipede species are there worldwide? Do we know?
Worldwide, there are currently about 12 to 15,000 described species.
Wow.
And so that's only the ones that we know of, but there's still many undescribed species. And so estimates for that range from like 20,000 to 80,000. And, I could see maybe like 20 to 30,000 total if we were to ever, in a perfect world, have every millipede species described. And so there's still a ton out there.
20 or 30,000 species of millipedes.
Mm-hmm. And in the U.S., we have about a couple thousand. It's
Okay.
temperate region. In the tropics, there's just an explosion of species. But we're not too shabby here in North America.
I mean, yeah, that's still pretty impressive. Okay, so if we got down even more finer scale than that, how many species are there in like the Southern Appalachians where you're studying them, or like we might have here in North Carolina?
Yeah, that's a good question. North Carolina actually has a checklist from the early 2000s of all their species. And so I think that number is a little over 100. But, the Southern Appalachians, if we throw everything in there, I mean, I could see probably 2 to 4 or 500 species of millipedes. The Southern Appalachians are very diverse. And so millipedes, they tend to be pretty endemic and so localized to one spot. There are some wide-ranging species, but that's sort of more the exception than the rule. And so in the Southern Appalachians, just with all the kind of like old rivers and mountains and everything, kind of channels them into different coves and areas. And so you just get an explosion of species. And, these things, they can't fly. They can kind of walk or run, but they also like to dig down. So they're home buddies. They kind of like to stay where they are. And so we've just had a bunch of speciation. And the Appalachians have just been such a relatively stable area for a while. And so it's been kind of a refuge for these species to escape, sea level rise, desertification, things like that. And so, it's a pretty good life to live in the Appalachians when you're a millipede.
Tell me a little bit about their life let's talk about Southern Appalachian. Let's talk about our backyard.
Yeah.
What's millipede life like?
So millipede life, it kind of depends on what type of millipede you are. The flat-backed millipedes, they don't have eyes, but some of these other millipedes do have eyes. They're not particularly good eyes, so they can maybe form very blurry images or kind of tell the light from the dark. But you're not really using your eyes so much if you're a millipede. What you are doing is using your sense of smell and using these nice antennae to really tap around where you are and kind of smell and sniff out other millipedes, other dangers, other food. And so, being a millipede, you're going to, kind of wake up whenever you want because millipedes don't abide any laws. So, early in the morning, maybe later in the afternoon, whatever. And so they're going to go out and, they like to stay in these kind of moist areas. So they're going to avoid full sun or very dry habitats. And so they're going to stick to areas that, they can find some moisture under leaf litter, under logs, maybe find a nice stream to live near. They'll kind of burrow down into the soil and hang out. And then when they get hungry, they're going to feed mainly on dead organic matter. So, dead leaves that have fallen from the trees and are kind of forming that base leaf litter layer of the forest. Maybe some lichens or algae or moss they'll kind of chew on as well. And so that kind of gets into their main ecological role. I like to think of them as sort of recyclers of the undergrowth. They're sort of these, they're doing a very important job taking out the trash, taking out the garbage, and just kind of ripping up these leaves and really mashing them up within their intestines and within their guts to just make these very smaller pieces that then opens up these leaves and other organic matter to be colonized by bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms. And so by doing this, millipedes are just really streaming right through the leaves, kind of sanding them down so that other organisms can digest them, release those nutrients, form soil layers, things like that. And so, that's kind of the main bag that millipedes do. So they're going to grab some snacks. They'll try to sniff out other millipedes. I do want to highlight one particular group of millipedes here. These are called the hedgehog millipedes or the pincushion millipedes. I'm finding a photo for you. And these are the most...
Pincushion millipede?
Yeah, you'll see what I mean. They're the most... They do not look like a millipede if this is the first time you're seeing them. So let's bring this up here. Yeah,
I have not heard of... Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. They're so strange. This one is like maybe 4 millimeters long. I found them hang out in pine cones and things like that. They're just very, very tiny. And so you see all these hairs it has all these layers along its back. It has them at the sides. Then they have this big tuft at the end of their bodies. And so that's their main defense. And they're using those hairs to defend against particularly ants. The ants, if they try to get them, they'll kind of almost like a porcupine, kind of thrust its tail at the ant, and those hairs are barbed, and so they're like tiny little fish hooks that'll catch onto the ant's legs, their mandibles, and kind of gum the ant up, and it'll essentially the ant will keep trying to clean itself, but just kind of get gummed up more into a ball, and the millipede can get away. So they're very strange. Um, they're unlike all these
That
other millipedes. They're so cool.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
I get called out because I say things in nature are amazing all the time, but I had no idea that there were millipedes that small,
Mhm.
for starters, or that they were ones covered in hairs that were barbed and that could just glue an ant together trying to get them.
Right?
And those are living, you said, like in pine cones, what, right here in our backyards?
I mean, I literally found one from I got off the bus one day to into my apartment, and I was passing by a pine tree, and I saw some pine cones on the ground. So, like any normal person would do, I picked up a pine cone and I was like, huh, I wonder what bugs are in this. So I threw it in a plastic container, kind of shuffled it around a little bit and looked at it under a microscope. And I saw them all just kind of moving around. So it was in the fall, so maybe they were preparing for the cold. So, I mean, I was just, it was great. I was so glad. So now whenever I pass a good pine cone, I'm like, gotta pick this one up.
Well, yeah, now I'm going to have to give that a try and like take
Yeah.
some pine cones back to the
Yeah.
Museum of Natural Sciences and
And
check them out.
grab a magnifying
No
glass.
idea.
You'll definitely need one.
Just a magnifying
Yeah,
glass.
they're so tiny.
Yeah, you said 4 millimeters, right?
Yeah.
That's
It's
barely.
nothing.
Well, okay. So then, can you give me a little bit of info? Like, is that one of the smallest? How big do millipedes get?
Sure. Yeah, that's certainly one of the smallest. 2 to 4 millimeters, I think, is the smallest size for a millipede. But they also get much, much bigger. There are, particularly in Central Africa, there are some species that are kind of just collectively called the giant African millipede, and those can get to over a foot long, and just these gargantuan things. They're amazing. They're sometimes kept in the pet trade. I know that some hobbyists will keep them, and so those ones will kind of give you pause when you see them. It's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And it's harmless to us. Don't like be mean to them because they've also got chemical defenses, but they're not seeking out anybody to bite them or anything. And so you get one of those things. So if you got the smallest millipede and the largest millipede, you could fit, I mean, easily over 1,000 of the smallest millipedes on the back of the largest. So they have pretty big range in size, but probably the most common ones you're going to see are about maybe half an inch, a centimeter to 2 inches long or so. The biggest one that you're going to see in the eastern U.S. is called the ironworm or the American millipede, and it'll get up to about 4 or 5 inches. And you also have that one in your area there in central North Carolina.
I'm thinking I've seen these. They look like little tubes. And they're sort of a reddish brown.
Yeah, they
very
do look like
rounded
tubes.
head.
Yeah, I'll bring up a photo for you.
They look like
there.
little miniature balloon animals with no twists and turns.
Yeah.
You just inflate
And
the
armor
balloon.
plating. There you go.
So
there's one in someone's hand.
Yeah, I know these little friends.
Another cool fact about them, the females will lay their eggs in little balls of poop and dirt. So that's one that's been opened up. So that little white thing in the middle is the egg, and then everything else is dirt and poop around it. And the reason they're laid like that is because the millipede will hatch, then it has to eat its way out of there. But by being by having poop there, that's how the mother will share microorganisms with the babies so that they can then digest their food, dead leaves and stuff. And so they rely on their gut bacteria to be able to eat that food. So it's a very caring, motherly way to lay your eggs.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that a typical reproductive strategy for millipedes?
They kind of have different ways of doing it, but oftentimes they will be in these kind of somehow encased in dirt and poop to try to transfer those microorganisms. Yep.
Very impressive. Millipedes have got a lot figured out.
They do, yeah. They're smarter than they get credited for.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I get it. Millipedes are fascinating creatures. And I think anybody who's watching who didn't think so definitely is convinced now.
I hope so.
So, I mean, what, just 10 minutes of hearing about some of their incredible adaptations and the way they live their lives and sizes and chemical defenses.
How can you not fall in love with that,
Yeah, exactly. Even just the sheer diversity, shape,
yeah.
sizes, colors is so impressive. And I can see why, like, somebody like yourself would get so interested in them. But tell me a little bit about your research specifically in describing species, organizing the taxonomy for all these critters. Give us some insight into like what exactly you're doing with all of these hundreds of species and why that's important.
Yeah, and so I'll highlight the twisted claw millipedes. This is a genus called Nenaria. It's one of these cherry millipedes. I'll bring up a photo here to show you. Let's see. Yeah, there's a nice one. And so this is a group that hasn't had too much attention compared to some of its relatives. And so, they're not the flashiest cherry millipedes. They're just kind of black or brown with white spots or red spots. And they're also a little bit more difficult to find. And so that's kind of why they haven't had as much attention paid to them. So when I started my research at Virginia Tech, that was one of my main projects. And so, currently it has about 20 species in the genus, but we knew that there were more because working with specimens from the Virginia Museum of Natural History, as well as the North Carolina Museum of Natural History, we brought some specimens from you guys. We knew that there were undescribed species throughout Appalachia and throughout the eastern U.S. And so, a really important driving force to my research is that, to really care about these things and protect them, they need a name because, you need a name to connect with these animals. And so I went with my colleagues. We did a bunch of collecting throughout the eastern U.S., over 20 states, just really trying to get everything we could. And so we got in the field, and I was lucky enough to be able to go to a lot of very, the nice thing about millipedes, they live in just these beautiful habitats. So going to state parks, national forests, wherever was a nice patch of leaves and dirt and trees, we'd kind of hit up. And so as we went out and collected them, we kind of scoop them up, bring them back to the lab. And so to really describe species of millipedes, you need to take a look at their anatomy. So they have particular legs that are modified for mating. And so those are sort of form the basis of the species identification. So we bring them back, we take off a couple of legs to store for later genetic work on them. And we would extract genetics from, those legs. And so as we just kept doing this for, we worked on this probably for 5 years, more if you count all the collections that other people did. We started to see just how many undescribed species there were. The final count that we have currently is about 50 new species. And so we're going to be describing those this year. It'll be a really good year to be in the millipede fandom. So watch out for any new millipede papers coming out. And so a really cool thing that we found about these twisted claw millipedes is that, there were just about 3 or 4 times the described species diversity. So once we're done describing species in this genus, we're going to have taken it from around 20 species to around 80 or more species. And a lot of these are from very small spots. We only know of some of them from one locality, maybe 1 or 2 places, but very endemic to their own areas. We even found one here in the Virginia Tech campus that has never been described before. And so we're currently in the process of describing that. And just seeing all these undescribed species, sometimes in our literal backyard, like the new species was maybe like 500 feet from where I did my research. Just seeing that they were right there, they've been there for longer than we've been here. And it just really drives home the fact that, this is our own natural heritage. And, we need to be working on naming it, caring about it, and making sure it's protected. Because particularly for these millipedes that are just really in one or two spots, they're very susceptible to, dangers of going extinct from habitat destruction. If we put a paved parking lot in the spot of a forest, and it's that particular patch of forest, then that's going to be bad news for these millipedes. So just kind of going through all this work and doing it really drove home the fact to me that, this undescribed diversity is here and we need to protect it. Growing up, I would see programs on like the Discovery Channel and all these nature programs where they're going thousands of miles away from me to the tropics. And it's like, oh, wow, all the undescribed stuff is there. It's like, no, we still have a lot of unknown biodiversity here, sometimes literally in our own backyards. And so it's been really great to be able to work on that.
That's so impressive.
It's it's all in the Millipedes.
Just incredible.
I'm just their ambassador.
Well, yeah, I think the Millipedes are glad they've got you.
Yeah, it's give and take.
So I had a pre-show interview with you, and then I went and I chatted with the Millipedes to get the behind the scenes stuff.
Oh yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, Derek's great."
Yeah.
So
we know him.
Sensitive. Yeah. We've seen that guy. How sensitive then are millipedes to environmental disturbance? Like I get paving a parking lot. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. You destroy habitat, that's going to dramatically impact them. But things like water quality or habitat quality. I mean, you're talking about finding them in backyards, but also in these pristine environments like mountaintops in the Appalachians. Mm-hmm. Does it vary by groups?
Yeah, it does vary. And so,
what's the situation?
I wish we had better data on it because, just even my own anecdotes and my own experiences are just kind of like very different. I'll find a new species in some like very protected area where, it looks pretty good. There's not a whole lot of disturbance. But then, at the same time, we found an uncommon species once, just literally along an interstate at a rest area. There was a patch of woods. So, this place it used to be a larger forest. It was, paved over for interstate for all the rest area stuff. And it was just right there. And so they can be resilient if they do have enough habitat. But then with disturbance, it also brings in some introduced species. So earthworms have been identified as a threat to the sort of leaf litter layer where they live, but there are also introduced millipedes. So we have a number of species that have been introduced from Europe, particularly, that you can find very often in sort of more urbanized habitats. So sometimes that'll be the only millipedes that you find. Other times they'll be coexisting with these other native millipedes that we have. So it can be tough to tell, but I kind of like to err on the side of caution and be like, let's try to keep things as undisturbed as they can be, even with how humans we love to disturb areas. So, it can be a crapshoot, really. Sometimes it can be very difficult to find these things. Sometimes you get lucky and they've just persisted. So,
are most of your research expeditions just to the sides of rest stops to dig around in some pine needles?
It kind of depends. We'll kind of hit up areas where we know the species have been found before or it's been found near, or we'll just be like, oh, that looks like a cool spot. Let's check it out. Sometimes it can be as random as, oh, that natural area has a cool name. Let's check it out. So, it varies.
But at least you get to hang out in some like just great places. And I'm guessing the best time of year to look for millipedes is probably like just gorgeous weather too.
Oh yeah, spring and fall is the best part. So, you get to the fall and all the trees are beautiful colors. You get to wear a nice coat that can hold more millipede vials in it. You're not sweating in the blazing hot sun. Then winter comes and then spring comes. And by spring, you're sick of being inside all the time. So you want to get out and look for these millipedes. So, it's very nice for us. And, they just love to be in these forests. I have friends who, they'll be doing their research in just meadows in the blazing hot sun or like farm fields. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, running around by these nice areas that have been built by the Civilian Conservation Corps and just beautiful hemlocks and, other tulip trees. It's great. I can't complain about my field work.
That sounds great. When this is over, I want to go on a field excursion
Let's do it.
because this just sounds like so much fun to find
Yeah.
all kinds of wild millipedes.
Yeah.
So
Science
this is
tonight from the
fascinating.
field.
There we go. We'll do some remotes.
Yeah.
We'll do remote segments from the. Okay, all right.
Well, let's keep in touch. That'd be awesome.
We're gonna work on that. This is a great idea. Okay, let me transition because I want to know what all of our viewers are thinking about tonight's topic too. And it looks like, so I've got the questions pulled up here, and
right.
these questions have been rolling in hot since as soon as we got started.
All right. I'll trust you to get some good ones because I can't see them.
Okay, we've got lots of time for questions, so hopefully we'll get to as many as we can. Our first one here is, okay, what is your favorite obscure species?
Oh, wow. Usually
Or
I just get,
group.
usually I just get, what's your favorite species? Oh man, favorite obscure species.
The little known.
Let's see.
I mean, you could probably pick anyone. I'm thinking, how many
Yeah.
folks here are millipede experts, and they're all obscure.
Yeah, let me bring up, let's see. I've got a good photo here of one of these things. Ooh. Oops. Maybe not a great photo.
I mean, that pine cone friend.
That pine cone friend was very good. I'll talk and I'll try to find the actual photo at the same time. But there's this group called, the genus is Conotyla. And so it's in a larger order that's also pretty diverse. And they're known as the only common name they have is the sausage millipedes, because their body kind of looks like a sausage, I guess, if you squint and haven't seen too many sausages. But they're just really cool. They're winter active, and so you don't really see them very often at all. Here we go. Here's a photo. But they're just not very well known. Yeah, there's a photo of one. And so they've got these little hairs that are everywhere. You know, they're not the most particularly gorgeous millipede after we've seen some of the cherry millipedes. But I'd like to learn more about them and try to find them. Unfortunately, since they're only really active in the cold weather, I'm not really out in the cold weather looking for millipedes too much, so I might have to get over that. But they're just really cool. The first time I found one of these was actually the day after Christmas. I was hiking with my brother in our grandparents' backyard. They had a patch of forest out there. I found some of these millipedes, and I later identified them. And it was a species that hadn't been collected in 80 years. Like, it was only known from one spot in central Ohio. It had never been collected since. And then I just randomly found it. So almost 80 years to the exact day. It was so weird. And so it's like, man, like,
that's cool.
How many other of these things are there? You know, what could their true range be? So it'd just be really cool to get into those a little bit more. So winter active millipedes, I guess, would be my favorite obscure ones.
Yeah, there you go. Good question, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me grab another one here.
Yeah.
What kind of harmful effects can invasive species of millipedes have on their environments? Yeah. And you mentioned that there were some exotic species.
Yeah. And, you know, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't really know that this has been looked into very much at all. Like, I don't know if, you know, these invasive ones come in and push the other ones out, or if they come in and maybe they have a slight negative effect, but they can sort of reach an equilibrium and coexist. A lot of these introduced millipedes have been in North America since probably a little bit after the Civil War. So, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s was when some of these were established. I'm sure some of them were established earlier with European colonization. But it's really a question of, particularly in the Northeast, most of the millipedes that you find are going to be these introduced ones. But those are also areas that have been glaciated. So is it that these introduced millipedes have been brought over in those areas and they've just replaced where native millipedes would be because any native millipedes were pushed out by glaciation? Or do they really have that negative effect? But I don't think we really know enough, at least here in North America, to say one way or the other. Anecdotally, I'll have times where we'll go to a spot that should be great and full of native millipedes, and we've only found the introduced ones. But just as many times we'll find both introduced and the native ones. So it's up in the air. I wish we knew, and it's a really important question to know the answer to.
All right, all right. John writes, what does Dr. Hennen think about the recent news of 8-year millipedes, periodical outbreaks of the train millipedes? Any chance of this phenomenon occurring in any North American species?
Ooh, see, that's a true millipede fan. That is hot off the presses. I think that was only a couple weeks ago. A team from Japan published a study, and it was very well researched, bringing like historical records and looking at the life history of certain millipede over there, which is also in the cherry millipede family, I might add. And so essentially that, kind of like how here in the eastern US we have periodical cicadas that are 13 or 17 years, apparently Japan has these 8-year periodical millipedes. And, I'm very jealous of that. That would be amazing to have these periodical millipedes over here. As for, the hopes of maybe one day finding them over here, who knows? We do know, and we do have records of in North America of millipedes kind of swarming together and migrating. And so there's one particular species, Pluraloma flavipes, that has been observed to do this before. And they'll just kind of get in these large aggregations, typically of juveniles with a couple adults, and just kind of like massively just keep walking and going through an area. We don't really know what causes it. That phenomenon has also been seen elsewhere in the world. In India, there's a paradoxosomatid millipede that is known to do that. But the thing is that these big aggregation masses of millipedes, we don't know how to predict them. So really the only stuff we know about them is, hey, they happen. So we really don't know a lot. But reading that paper, one of my thoughts was, I wonder if these aggregations might also be like some type of periodicity or something. So it'd be really cool. I wish we could know. And I think some of the historical data that helped that team figure out the Japanese periodical millipedes is that they oftentimes would kind of cause train delays or derailments or something because they would go all over the tracks and kind of get squished. So maybe if we had more train lines, then we'd be able to kind of monitor that a little bit. But it's a great question. It's a really fun question, something to think about. I'll cross my fingers that maybe someday we'll see we do have periodical millipedes.
They're out there just waiting to be discovered.
Gotta set a trip for Japan in the next 8 years.
There you go. You've got time to write that grant.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Erla wants to know, is it true that millipedes can't bite us, but most centipedes can, or other small critters?
Right.
And then there was another question. What do millipedes eat? Are they omnivore, carnivore, herbivore?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, millipedes, they're vegetarians. They're eating dead plant matter and stuff. A couple have been seen to sort of scavenge on like a carcass of various bugs or something, but that's pretty rare. Okay. In general, millipedes are just vegetarians. So, they don't have like, big teeth to bite you with. Their mouth parts, it's kind of a grinding plate. And so they just kind of mash up any food. So technically, one of these big American millipedes, these 4 or 5 inch long cylindrical tube millipedes, they're big enough to where, they could kind of try to, it'd be more like a pinch with their like mouth plate, because they're just trying to like figure out, if you're holding them and they're trying to gnaw on you, they're just trying to figure out what's going on, but they can't really bite. They don't really have teeth like we would think about them. Centipedes, however, they do have what are called forcipials. And so these are actually modified legs. And so they might look like, teeth or fangs, but they're not. I wonder if I have a photo anywhere. Nah, probably not. But so they can bite, weirdly, with modified venom-carrying legs. So we just call them forcipials. But at the same time, most of the centipedes you're going to encounter, especially in Eastern North America, they're just too small to really bite you. And they don't even want to bite you. Anytime I've uncovered a centipede, it's immediately tried to run away from me because, they're feeding on small like bugs and worms and other stuff like that. in some areas of the tropics and in like the American deserts, we do have larger centipedes that could give you a good little bite there. So just, in general, just leave a centipede alone. Don't try to pick it up, and it'll leave you alone. But it could bite you. Just respect our many-legged friends, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, there you go.
And that the age-old saying, they're more afraid of you than you are of them.
Always good to remember.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here we've got a viewer. I've heard millipedes are one of the oldest land-dwelling animals. Is that true?
That is true, yeah. They were some of the first air-breathing terrestrial organisms. And so they're a very old lineage. I believe there have been some recent papers about this, but they're from either the Silurian or Devonian, kind of that time period. So much, much older.
Some of the first critters to breathe air.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. That's cool.
There were even, this was later, but during the Carboniferous, there were these very large millipedes that were, I believe, up to 6 feet long and half a meter wide. So, you could put a saddle on that, put a child on it, and he could just ride the millipede through the woods.
I had thought somebody was asking about giant millipedes.
Yeah.
Were they extinct?
Unfortunately,
the really big ones.
Yeah, those huge ones, they are extinct, sadly. Arthropleura is what they were called, but if you ever have a time machine and want to go back to a neat period, Carboniferous.
Or maybe not. I don't know. I guess you wouldn't have to worry about a millipede. You just sort of step out of their way, let them go on by.
Yeah. Just, very quickly, go back, say hello, take a photo, then come back. Actually, yes, do take a photo because we don't know what its head looked like. We've got fossil impressions of, some of its body and like its leg prints, but, we haven't had a head capsule preserved in a fossil yet that's been found. So who knows?
There we go. Work for millipede biologists and paleontologists.
That's right.
Okay. More questions here. Troy is asking, how many scientists study millipedes?
Yeah, so there aren't as many scientists studying millipedes as there are, like, say, insects, but there's a worldwide community. And, there'd be, I don't know that there's really a census of people that study millipedes, but, it'd be a couple hundred people study millipedes worldwide. There's been some really amazing work coming out of a group based in Thailand, and also from scientists in Vietnam and China. They've been putting out these amazing publications. If you search for dragon millipedes, you're going to see some amazing photos of millipedes that have been recently described in the past decade or two at this point. But great work coming from over there. So, we're a small community, but, we could always use some more people helping us identify these myriapods and learning more about them. So put your hat in the ring.
Yeah, there you go, everybody. Okay. Hank and Denise are asking, are pincushion millipedes the same as bristle millipedes?
Yes. Yep. And so this there's an entire order called the Polyxenida. Bristle millipedes, hedgehog millipedes, pincushion millipedes. There's a lot of fun names for them. Not many millipedes have common names, but thankfully these ones do.
All right. Has any research been done on millipedes digesting plastics?
Not to my knowledge. They probably, I'm sure they do ingest some plastic because when they're going through the undergrowth and just eating leaves, they're also getting a bunch of dirt and anything else that's kind of in the undergrowth there. So I'm sure millipedes kind of will pick up some plastic, but I imagine it just kind of passes through. But I don't know of any research about them digesting it at all.
All right. Watching over on Facebook, Amber has a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. What millipede species illuminate or fluoresce in this case?
Yeah, so the ones that are truly bioluminescent that can produce their own light are a genus called Motixia, the California luminescent millipedes. And so those are, I believe, it's about a dozen species, maybe a little less. And there's one species known from southern Japan that can also bioluminesce. And I forget the name of that one, but it's the only one in Japan.
Should folks like me in my backyard or in a park nearby, if I get a hold of an ultraviolet light source
Mhm.
and just head outside on a nice spring night, would I see fluorescing millipedes?
Yeah, you could find fluorescent millipedes. And so, um, just to be clear, bioluminescent millipedes are producing their own light. That's only California and Japan. But a lot of other
Mhm.
millipedes will fluoresce with the help of a black light. So, pretty much if you're in actually a good portion of the US, but particularly in the eastern US, go into a forest at night with your UV flashlight. And you might be, if you kind of, bring a little rake or stick to kind of move the leaves around, you'll probably be able to find one. And you might find there are caterpillars that fluoresce. There are apiliones, daddy long legs. Some of those will fluoresce under black light. Lichens. There's a lot of stuff that will fluoresce under UV light. So it's cool. It kind of opens up a whole new world to look at. So it's highly recommended.
Excellent stuff. And what is the most popular millipede in West Virginia?
Oh, West Virginia. Probably either the American millipede, that Narcissus americanus is generally the species, or probably one of the cherry millipedes, often called the Virginia cherry millipede. So this is the genus Aphiloria. And so those are the two kind of like large common ones. So I'll bring up a photo of Aphiloria because we haven't seen that yet. This is also the common one that I've seen in Ohio. Here we go. Let me share my screen here. Yeah, so this is the Virginia cherry millipede. This is a pair from southern Ohio. The female is the top one and the male is on the bottom. You can see the female is a little bit larger than the male. But these are very common, and you can find them kind of throughout the eastern U.S., but particularly in West Virginia as well. Good
There you
question.
go, Amber. Now you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, and these will also fluoresce under UV light, so get out and look for them, maybe in a couple months when it's warmer.
All right, so I'm looking at the chat, and I think we've got some up and coming millipede researchers
Nice.
because they're saying we've at least one person here is like, I'm gonna go finding millipedes, and they want to know about like your collecting strategies. Like, do you collect lots of the same species? Are you trying to get one of everything? And maybe related to that, I'll go ahead and throw this one out there too. Do you have any like really great and interesting field stories?
Yeah, okay. Let me think about that. I'll get into collecting strategies first. So probably the best way to find millipedes, at least in the eastern U.S., it's very involved. You need a very heavy-duty tool, such as this little hand garden cultivator. I got this one for about $8 from a hardware store. And you just need something to move the leaves around because millipedes, they're not generally going to be out in plain sight, but they're going to be under the leaves, under logs, places like that. And so, if you want to get out and find millipedes, I'd recommend going out and, taking photos at first. Don't collect specimens yet. Kind of get a feel for what you're looking for. But if you do want to collect them, you can either keep them alive for a couple of days to kind of observe them and see what they do. And to do that, just put them in a container with dirt and leaves, some moss, spray it with some water every so often because they need it to be moist. But if you want to actually collect millipedes, you want to put them into a vial of alcohol. So you can use either ethanol or isopropanol, rubbing alcohol. And so let me see if I have one here. Yeah, so here's an example. So I've got a little vial here. See if we can put it up there. There's a little millipede.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So you also want to make sure to put a label in there. So write on it, use pencil, don't use pen because it'll wipe off in the alcohol. But that's a good way to do it. And so if you kind of start just with your local species, you can kind of see what's around you and kind of get a feel for what you're seeing and kind of the common species. But yeah, get out there, explore, and really take a look at the natural world around you. And millipedes are a great entryway into that. As for any interesting field stories, I mean, I've enjoyed most times when I've gone out in the field. I did a lot of collecting with Dr. Jackson Means, who's now at the Virginia Museum of Natural History. So we built a strong bond through all of our millipede trips. And I don't know, it's hard to pick just one. But let's see, maybe I'll highlight one of the times that it was very frustrating for me when I was looking for millipedes. And so this was in northern Georgia, and I was in some national forest land at a recreation area, and it was just beautiful. It was just full of like hemlocks and rhododendrons. There was a nice stream going through, so everything was nice and cool. The soil was just like nice and loamy and just dark soil. And it's like, oh, these things have got to be here. And so I was searching for probably 2 hours. I hadn't found anything. It was like, this makes no sense. This is the perfect spot for twisted claw millipedes. Where are they? And so now I was just frustrated, and I got kind of angry. So I just used my little tool, and I was just kind of beating the dirt with it. I was like, they should be here. Where are they? And, I was digging in the process, got a couple of centimeters down in the soil, and then I found it. So, they were just hiding right below where I couldn't find them before. So sometimes you just have to, channel a little bit of that frustration into the field work, and you can get them. But that was always memorable for me. It's like, I knew they should be here. I was right.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's see. How do you make sure you're not collecting the same species over and over?
Yeah, that's probably just takes experience. Once you've collected some local species, kind of like seen what they are and identified them, then you'll kind of get an eye for it. It's almost hard for me to remember when I was first starting to get into millipedes, and how I didn't know what everything is, because now like I'm much more used to it, so I can just like look at millipede and it's like, oh well, it's this thing. But you kind of have to build up that library of knowledge and just kind of the search image for each of these species. And so if you're going out collecting for the first time, don't collect every millipede you see, but just try to look for ones that look different to you. That way you're just not getting all the same species. But you just kind of have to like learn. And, if you're taking photos, that can also be a good way. Sometimes the millipedes, they can look pretty different from when they're a juvenile to when they're an adult and when they're an older adult. The color can kind of change, especially if you find one after it's molted. The color is not going to be like fully tanned and dark, so it'll be pretty pale. So, just kind of get some experience and just get out there and look. If you keep getting a lot of the same species, well, that's just how you learn. Sometimes our mistakes are the best teachers for us. So it's kind of what I've sort of settled on at this point.
Such wisdom. Such wisdom. Okay, I've kept you too long. I've kept everybody on the show too long. But there's one last really good question here, and it gets into some of the work that I know that you're very involved in. Are there citizen science projects or community science projects with millipedes that people can get involved in?
Currently, I don't know of any sort of citizen science projects for millipedes, but something that has been pretty useful has just been, if you're taking photos anyway, put those up on a site like iNaturalist, where you can share your nature photos. I spent a lot of time on that site. I think in the chat, a link was shared to all the millipede photos I've uploaded to there. And so, I'll be on there identifying millipedes for people. And we've been able to find a couple possible new species thanks to that site. We found, where we want to go and collect some species. Actually, one of my colleagues, Fernanda Vasquez, she has been doing, she's about to finish her master's at Virginia Tech. But when she started, her first field season was supposed to be for this past summer, but with COVID restrictions, she wasn't able to do field work. So she actually did a small citizen science project, partly through iNaturalist, where she was having people send her species of a certain millipede that she needed. And she was able to get a lot of specimens that way to help her actually complete her research project. And so she's getting to the end of that now. But I think if you search on iNaturalist for Cherokee Citizen Science Project, then you'll actually find her project. So that actually is probably the best one to go to. And if you're finding a millipede that, or that species of millipede, that could help her research. And so that's Cherokee, Cherokia. So Cherokee Citizen Science on iNaturalist will kind of lead you there.
There you go, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, and before I forget, if you are getting out in the field looking for millipedes, I highly recommend long pants, long sleeves. Treat your pants with permethrin to avoid ticks, and watch for poison ivy, because that is sort of the nature tax that I have encountered when I've looked for millipedes. For whatever reason, some of the best millipedes are right on the other side of a hillside, just covered in stinging nettle and poison ivy. So if you've never touched stinging nettle, it'll just kind of feel like part of your body's on fire for about 5 minutes. But, sometimes those millipedes are worth it. But watch out for ticks.
Very
Safety
very
is the
good
number
advice.
one priority when you're in the field.
And as an employee of a state natural history museum, I'll remind everybody to be thoughtful. If you are thinking about collecting, there are places where you need permission to do that.
Yes.
Make sure you get permission just about anywhere. Just get permission.
Yeah. That's
before you go grabbing.
Yeah. But you can always take photos. So I recommend starting with photos.
Take lots of photos. In fact, hey, everybody, if you get out there and take great photos of millipedes, especially around North Carolina, put them online. And then like on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, you can tag the museum at Natural Sciences, because we like to see the nature that you're experiencing as well out of the museum.
Yep. If you need an identification, contact me.
How do they do that?
Let's see. Twitter is a pretty easy way, at Derek Hennen or at Dear Millipede. You can also email me at derhennen@gmail.com. So that's derhennen@gmail.com.
There you go, everybody.
Yeah.
Right there at your fingertips.
Or if you put it on iNaturalist, I'll probably find it eventually.
Excellent stuff. Derek, this was fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. Great questions.
The audience was great, and you were fantastic. You were great.
Well, thank you.
I'll remind everybody, hey, folks, there's a lot of great programming coming out of the Museum of Natural Sciences. Head to naturalsciences.org to get updates on the latest programs. Tuesday nights we play trivia, Wednesday at noon, all month long. We've got the Black History Month series with the Office of Environmental Education. And hey, next Thursday at 7:00, we're going to be doing this show again. Every Thursday at 7, we're live right here at the museum's YouTube channel. So you can click subscribe below, click the little bell to get notified when we're going live with new videos. That way you don't miss a live episode of Science Tonight. Next week, we'll be talking with a panel of researchers who only just recently got back from Antarctica. That's right. They were looking for invertebrates in the frigid south of Antarctica aboard a research vessel for several weeks, collecting, studying, learning more. Megan McCullough, who works for the museum, and 2 colleagues. Yeah, Derek, you know Megan, right?
I'm a fan of Megan. Yeah. She's a friend to millipedes.
She is a friend of all invertebrates.
That's right.
Megan's going to be on the show, collections manager for non-molluscan invertebrates at the museum, and 2 of the colleagues who also were on the research trip. So next week's going to be great. It ought to be a fun conversation. We're just doing a whole invertebrate thing here right now.
That's the best thing we can possibly have. That sounds great. I'll have to tune in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see you in the chat. Yeah. So, hey, that's next Thursday at 7. Follow the museum on social media at Natural Sciences on any social media platform. We're at NC Natural Sciences here on YouTube, but you know that because you're here with us. Hey, we'll see you next time, everybody. Take care. Stay safe. Good night.